This is Central to NWA, a UCA podcast. I'm your host, Paul Gatling, and we are bringing the University of Central Arkansas to Northwest Arkansas. Each episode, we will talk with leaders, alumni, and innovators driving this region forward, people who are shaping industries and defining what is next for our state. Let's get started. All right, we're back for another edition of Central to NWA, a UCA podcast. I'm your host, Paul Gatling, and I'm very excited today to be joined by Kevin Parkerson, somebody I've met through my job here at UCA last year. I think our first conversation was at Heroes Coffee.
It was, so which is very nearby.
I know, it feels like this is the perfect spot to keep this going, because if you don't know, we're recording at podcastvideos.com, and it's about, 20 steps away from Heroes Coffee here in Pinnacle Hills. So, and it's been, if you're like me, it's kind of my unofficial office.
And that's where I was going to say, Paul, is if you ever look for me, I'm probably at Heroes Coffee. So not to give them too much of a plug, but it's a great hub, a great meeting place.
Yeah. Well, we'll give them a plug. Yeah, we'll give those guys a plug. So anyway, Kevin, thanks for being here today. I'm excited to have a conversation with you. We'll get into this, your career, 30 plus years with logistics at both J.B. Hunt and Walmart, and now the founder of your own consulting firm, KP Global Logistics, that's based here in Northwest Arkansas.
It is.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
All right. So like we said, we'll get into that shortly, your career here, but let's go back to where it all started at UCA in Conway, Arkansas. You're from Dermot, Arkansas, extreme South Arkansas. How does a boy from the Delta end up in Conway at the University of Central Arkansas?
Yeah, I love telling this story, but you may have to edit it because I'm going to be long-winded on it. But it's a story that I love to tell because, and it's got UCA is a big part of it. But I tell people I was born and raised, educated, got married, started my career, started my family, all in the state of Arkansas. And I'm very proud of that. Like I said, I love telling that story. But if people don't know where Dermot is, it is the exact opposite of where you and I are at today. We're in Northwest Arkansas, and it is in the far southeast corner of Chico County. A lot of people, when I tell them where I'm at, they say, oh, yeah, I think I went through there on my way to Florida to the beach.
Only so many bridges to cross.
And you didn't go through Dermot. You went by it.
Yep.
Yeah.
On the way to Lake Village.
All the way to Lake Village, exactly. So, I'm from Dermot, educated in the public school system in Dermot, and ended up in Conway at UCA, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But born and raised in Southeast Arkansas, and met my wife at UCA, and ended up in Northwest Arkansas, which is where I'm at today. But I'll give a lot more details about that story, but very proud of my heritage of Southeast Arkansas and being raised and educated in Southeast Arkansas.
As a senior in high school, what was it about UCA that ultimately, initially caught your attention and ultimately got you up to Conway?
So my sister attended Hendrix, and I went on a school visit. And actually, I was excited about this. So being from Southeast Arkansas, at that point in time, had not been out of Southeast Arkansas very often. But I was actually a junior and got the opportunity to start visiting some schools on trying to determine exactly where I was going to go. My sister, like I said, was at Hendrix, and I took the opportunity to take two girlfriends to UCA for a tour of the campus. And that really, at that point in time, I had leaned toward that because my sister was at Hendrix, but following her in a way was a little bit of the draw. But once I went on the tour and walked through the campus, talked to people, I was sold. I loved the campus. I loved the people that I visited with. I love the fact that it was 3 hours away from home, but it was still in the state of Arkansas. And to be honest with you, I like the fact that some friends of mine that I knew were also going to be attending there. So all of those combined is what ultimately led me to UCA. There's a lot more to the story that starts at UCA, but that's how I ended up at UCA.
Right.
I had explored a couple of other, schools in-state and out of the state. My dad set me down and said, look, in-state is what you're doing for these reasons. And I understood at that point in time, but loved the fact that I would still be in the state of Arkansas, but could be, away from mom and dad and spread my wings.
So a lot of those variables led you to UCA, and then UCA led you mentioned, to the love of your life, your wife. I think you told me you guys met in your second year at UCA. What do you remember about that time in your life and those circumstances that brought you together?
I've told this story a lot, so I'm glad I'm documenting it for my kids, my grandkids, and just a legacy. But I was a sophomore, at UCA in Arkansas Hall. A lot of great stories in Arkansas Hall. But my wife was in Conway Hall, and this was her freshman year, my sophomore year. It was like the second week of school, I think, and a friend of hers that she had gone to high school with was in the dorm and in the room right next to me. She came over to visit just to say hi, make the connection, and my door just happened to be open to my dorm room, and he stopped by and said, hey, let me introduce you to Beverly. And he walked her to the door, left, and as soon as he came back, I said, who was that? You got it, thanks for the introduction, but include her in our group outings or whatever. And literally from that point on, we dated for like 3 or 4 months, and that was in 1988.
What is a first date in Conway in 1988? What and where what's that look like?
I don't remember what the first date was like. A lot of at that time was more of the groups going out. I don't necessarily remember taking her to Wendy's or to Western Sizzle and, or any of those those dates. I do remember, and these are some of the details of the stories. I do remember, the location of the first kiss, which, this is a great story, and very few people probably will, this will resonate with a lot of the UCA alumni, but our first kiss was at Toadsuck Park. And a lot of people are like, what? And when I tell people who aren't from this area, they stand up and take notice. But Toadsuck Park was a location that a lot of us as a group, we always hung out at.
Yep.
But I distinctly remember, the first kiss. The second kiss was on the steps of Conway Hall at UCA.
And your wife is loving you telling this story. I know.
She's hating it right now.
All right. Well, let's go to a more institutional question. And you were a Phi Beta Lambda guy in the UCA College of Business. What do you remember about that? What stands out from those days studying as an undergrad?
Yeah, I just loved, getting into college life and finding, I'll call it my people, from a business standpoint. I started off as an accounting major. My dad was a CPA. I ended up a marketing communications major, but I knew I wanted to do something in business. And that organization allowed me to, I'll say, be with my people, find people who were like-minded, and it gave me an opportunity to really start some of my leadership and, polish some of my leadership skills. A lot of the sponsors, the professors that were involved, in that organization helped, in some ways mentor me and teach me, business. But I thoroughly enjoyed just being a part of a group in a collegiate setting. In business, like-minded people who wanted to, better their education, but wanted to be in that type field.
Is there anything about those lessons and those teachings and that network that you were in about that UCA experience that still resonates today as you work and as you lead? Anything that sticks out? Yeah,
at the time, Paul, I don't think I realized it, but it really helped me focus in on developing those people skills. I was 18, 19 years old, shy, introverted kid from Southeast Arkansas, at college, had been away from home very, very much, and really got to, get to start the people development skill. I call them people development skills that I use today, at a obviously different level and in the business. But I distinctly remember, interacting with professors and my peers in that type setting, and having to learn, how to conduct yourself, in those type settings.
All right. Okay. Well, let's fast forward a little bit today to something that's happening right now, and that's your recent appointment to the UCA Foundation Board. Congratulations. We're very excited. I know you're excited that I'm excited to have you there. It's a big deal for us, and frankly, kind of a full circle moment for you, because a lot of your stories we've just discussed, so much of it starts on campus. What made you say yes to serving on the foundation board for UCA?
Yeah, it's a season of life, I would say, that I'm at, and it may sound a little cliche, but I love at this point in time that I can give back in some way. I'm not exactly sure how I'll give back, but getting the opportunity, being, hearing my story that I just mentioned, being born and raised in Arkansas, and then now in a position that I can work collaboratively, with people like-minded, at UCA to help support UCA, to help foster relationships, develop policies, all the things that a board can do and should do. I'm just excited to be a part of that, and honored to be chosen and to participate in that way.
Initial takeaway from your first board meeting in Conway earlier this year.
Yeah, we were just talking about it. It was a very, very good experience. I observed. My personality is for the first time, I observed quite a bit, but I was very, very pleased, and had a little bit of a moment of, how did a young, shy, introverted Southeast Arkansas kid end up here, on the board? If someone had told me that in 1987, when I walked on that campus, that I would be, sitting on the foundation board and having the conversations about how to support the university, I would have been really surprised that that's the path that I was at. But I'm very honored to really be a part of that, and hope that I can serve well and, give back as much as I can.
That sounds like you had a moment of great reflection.
I did.
You were sitting there.
I really did. Yeah.
On campus. As it relates to Northwest Arkansas, how do you see the foundation board helping the institution strengthen its presence in this region?
Yeah, I think, having your leadership here is huge. I love, I've lived here 30 plus years. So I feel like, I'm not one of the OGs. That would be my wife, pretty close. But I love, the background and the history of raising a family here. I also have my youngest daughter is an alumni of UCA. We'll probably get to that as well. But I love that background and that rooted, I'm not from Northwest Arkansas, but a lot of times, I've lived here longer than anywhere else. So I feel like, I'm rooted here, and love supporting the Northwest Arkansas area, and love the role that I have on the foundation board, that I can help do that.
Yeah, you and I are alike, and we've talked about this. It'll be 25 years for me in January living in Northwest Arkansas. I ask people during conversations, what do you think the cutoff is? And I think we've come up with, if you've lived here for 10 years, you're a native, because anything less than 10 years is a lot of people. That's a big demographic of people who've lived here for less than 10 years, or less than 5 years even, because there's so much movement into this region.
Yeah. I had not been to this area until I met my wife in college.
Yeah.
I drove into Bentonville, and I could, the interstate stopped at the Bentonville exit.
That's right.
And Moberly Lane was like literally a one-lane road. I think it may have been gravel.
Barely gravel.
Yeah, at that point in time.
Yeah.
But 1988, drove into Bentonville and have seen a dramatic change, obviously, since that time frame.
Yeah, that is one for the time capsule there, if you're listening. Moberly Lane in Bentonville, a barely gravel road, one-lane road at the outskirts of Bentonville.
Yeah, it really was.
All right, so you moved here. Let's go back to that time. You moved from Conway to Northwest Arkansas, and I think you and your wife had like a pact. Whoever got the job first, wherever they got the job, that's where we're going. So your wife gets a job in Springdale, and so I think early 90s, 1992, you move to Northwest Arkansas. So we did a little bit of that. Paint that picture. What did this region feel like, 1992?
Yeah, like I said, I had not even been to this part of the state. Born and raised in Southeast Arkansas, I went to all the Razorback games at War Memorial Stadium. I didn't go north of Little Rock. I didn't have any reason to go north of Little Rock, much less Northwest Arkansas. I knew about Bentonville and heard about Bentonville and Walmart on the news. But when my wife and we decided to get married, and the pact was whoever got the job first, that's where we would locate at. She was really smart and said, hey, look, this area up here, this is where I want to be. This is where I'm from. And she got the job first and worked at Springdale Hospital. We lived in Rogers. And at that point in time, I was just graduating out of college. And where do you apply for a job in Northwest Arkansas in 1992? It's Walmart, it's Tyson, and J.B. Hunt. And J.B. Hunt is who called first. And the story begins there.
Right. Well, you've seen a lot, 30 plus years, you've seen this region evolve quite a bit. What is something about Northwest Arkansas that really people get wrong, or maybe they don't understand about this region and its evolution?
Yeah, I think the growth and how fast the growth has happened.
Yeah, it's fast growth.
Yeah, it has scared people in a way. And change, and the change, being married to someone who, was basically raised here, has seen even more change than I've talked about. And I think that's a little bit of the fear that people have of all the change. And infrastructure, the amount of people, and all of that, I think is somewhat of a negative in perceptions from people.
Yeah, I was just I was at a mayor's coffee this morning, and of course, to talk about city issues. And of course, the first guest she brought up was Preston Newbill, the wastewater utilities director in Bentonville, because that's what everybody's talking about. Preston Newbill, a UCA guy, by the way, and worked for the city since 1991. And I told him, if he's not already, you're about to be the most popular guy in City Hall because of the constant growth challenges and growth discussions about water and wastewater infrastructure. All right, so you talked about, let's go to the J.B. Hunt chapter. You mentioned that, you were looking for a job, and this part of the story is kind of interesting to me. You applied all over. I mean, not just those three, but you applied
I did.
To a lot of places, and you walk into, at that time, J.B. Hunt's brand new intermodal division. I think you were one of the first, 10 or 12 employees, and now it employs thousands of people. And it's, if it's known for a division, intermodal may be one of the highlight divisions of J.B. Hunt. Did you realize at the time?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I was just looking for a job, literally a job in business. And thankfully, like you said, they resurrected the brand of Quantum. And I distinctly remember we were part of the Quantum group. And I think there were like a dozen of us. I was an hourly employee at the time, tracking chassis and containers. And I could give you all kinds of, horror stories of, you can imagine the manual process that required. But I had no idea, really what was coming.
Did you use a computer?
We did have a computer. Yes, we had Lotus 123, I think is the email. And I just thought that, how interesting that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was where I injected myself into corporate America, and learned so much about corporate America and business. Some great teachers, great mentors. Some are still there, a lot were not. But what a great experience. I spent about a decade there in a variety of roles, and really, cut my teeth there on supply chain. That started it wasn't international, but it started my supply chain and my interest in solving logistics problems.
So what do you remember, or what do you recall about that learning corporate America? Sounds like you were figuring it out as you go. I mean, what do you recall about just figuring it out as you go in a new division, new company, and a new place to live?
It was the basic stuff of a business meeting, how to conduct yourself, literally.
Mm-hmm.
I had not had that experience, not growing up. And even, in my studies at UCA, conducting a meeting, how to conduct yourself, how to lead people. I had an opportunity to lead people 3 years into my career there. And had a lot of understood the value of relationships and mentors and being mentors and having mentors. At that time, it wasn't called that, or I didn't call it that. Looking back on it, I know exactly that's what it was. And I had a lot of great teachers, they just taught me about business, not necessarily about the work, but about business.
So it sounds like, and you said you moved on, and we're going to get to that next, but as you look back on your time at JB Hunt, that mentorship and being part of that sort of, partnership was maybe an important lesson that you took with you as you departed.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. And reflecting back on it, I know that now. At that time, I didn't know that those were the lessons that I was learning. But really, having people teach you and mentor you was really critical for me during those 10 years. And when I reflect back on my time at JB Hunt, very fond memories of exactly that.
All right. So after 10 years, you make the jump to Walmart, make the jump up to Bentonville. What drew you there? What were the circumstances of that job change?
It was a phone call that I received from a friend of mine that I knew outside of work that said, "Hey, I've got this role. It's called the Jones Act. It's ocean logistics for Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto Rico." And I questioned, "Why are you talking to me? You know where I work. You know I play with trains all day. Why are you talking to me?" Long story short, I interviewed for it, and someone took a chance on me 10 years of my career, which really started my global logistics supply chain career, which is what I've done my entire career and what I'm doing today. But started off, managing Jones Act. And I distinctly remember starting in July of 2002. Anybody in the supply chain world knows what happened in the fall of 2002, which was the first of many of ILWU strikes, labor disruptions. And you can imagine Hawaii and Alaska were negatively impacted. And I was 4 months into my career at Walmart, managing freight movement from the mainland U.S. to those entities and to Puerto Rico. And baptism by fire.
Yeah, I learning as you go.
I learned as I went. I had some phenomenal service providers that came in and taught me about maritime logistics, global logistics, that I am forever grateful for. Took me under their wing and helped teach me ocean maritime logistics.
So besides that difference of, as you say, working with trains, and now you're in the water, your freight, your cargo freight, your maritime, what was the most different about the pace and really just the scale of stepping into Walmart and that job?
Yeah, it's significant. And I didn't realize it at that time as well. I was, just trying to absorb the fact that I was responsible for stores in these states, in Hawaii and Alaska, for having cargo. And I didn't have a team. It was one person, is how it was structured. Again, anybody knows anything about Walmart, very lean. Those teams were very, very lean. And that's why I relied very heavily on the service providers that managed that movement of cargo. But, a great learning curve that I use those learnings, today. I use those relationships. I take that approach with the relationship of service providers that took that chance with me.
Going back to the mentors that we discussed, who were the mentors and the leaders at Walmart that still you remember today? Who was the most influential in your career as you got up and running at Walmart there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I had a lot of those, a lot of good industry leaders. A lot of them were at Walmart, but again, they were at service providers or people that were in the industry. Rob Kusil and Brian Most, those are the two that really took me under their wing, taught me not just about maritime logistics, but, strategy development, fine-tuning my people skills, mentoring skills. But both of those, well-known in the industry, and really, taught me a lot about how to conduct yourself and how to work with service providers.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I knew you'd say Brian Most. I got familiar with him from my days at the Business Journal.
Yeah.
A titan really in that industry and in that company. I'm guessing you guys collected a few stories that you'll never forget.
Absolutely.
From that era. So, all right. So just a few years ago, I think 2022, you decide to launch your own firm, KP Global Logistics Consulting. What pushed you to make that leap into the consulting world?
Yeah, my wife asked me that as well. What are you doing?
Still wants
Why?
to know.
I call it KP. Kevin Parkerson, but I go by KP. Quite a few people in the industry don't know my name is Kevin. They just call me KP.
Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah, but I woke up one day literally and decided, at that point in time, I had a pivotal decision. Do I want to stay in corporate America or do I want to ride solo? And at this point in my career, I chose to kind of go the entrepreneurial route, start my own consulting business, advisory for who I see are underserved, small and medium-sized businesses. And people ask me, why small and medium-sized businesses? One, they're geographically, a lot of those are around me, in Northwest Arkansas, but they're also underserved in the industry and typically are not resourced with people or dollars in a way that they need or have a dedicated global logistics or a supply chain resource. So I'm thoroughly enjoying helping small and medium-sized businesses navigate global logistics or global supply chain. Trying times in the last 4 or 5 years. So there is not, there's a lot of businesses that need that resource or what I call the phone a friend. And I've chosen to help these businesses that are, like I said, geographically around me. Not all of them are. I've got clients that are across the globe that just need someone, in many cases, to help them navigate what is transpiring in the industry. I leverage my background, my experience, my network to be that resource and to help.
Yeah, what a time for you to go into start your own business, right? These last 3 or 4 years. I mean, pretty smooth sailing, right? I say that tongue in cheek, very smooth sailing.
Yeah, it's been challenging times. And it's really been, because of the pandemic, the light has been shown on supply chains. Yep. And, some businesses have done really well in reacting and some have not. And that's where I can step in and try to be that resource or that advisor that can help.
What the businesses that do well versus the ones that do not do well, what is the difference there? What do they do that allows them to succeed where others are struggling?
They tap into their resources and they plan. That's it. I mean, it's really basic, tapping into the resources that you have. People like myself that are in the industry, but also aligning with the right service provider. And I say right, service provider / partner. And then planning, being prepared for a lot of my career, all of my career, really contingency planning and being prepared for the next event. There always is one. That was a huge part of my career and a lot of experience in doing exactly that. And I help a lot of businesses plan and strategize for the events that no one's thinking of right now. And there's a lot of value in being prepared for those type things, especially in supply chain.
Is that work still interesting after all these years? It's still exciting for you?
It's problem solving, right? And I learned that from day one, sitting at a desk at JB Hunt. I was problem solving. Where was the chassis at, or where was this container at, and making sure that the customer got their delivery. That was my job from day one. And that problem solving, the movement of cargo, fascinates me, still interests me, and why I'm still doing it today.
So the one constant thing up here, Northwest Arkansas, is just always going to be evolution, growth. In your industry, supply chain, logistics, what's the next big wave coming in, especially for a place like Northwest Arkansas? No pun intended with the wave there.
Yeah. You have to talk about AI and what that is doing. It's so interesting to me. I think about the things that AI can do today And I think about things that I did in my career just 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and how it could have helped me be more efficient, saved me more time. I'm so excited and interested to see how that's going to play and what role it's going to play. And that's part of my consulting and advisory type work that I'm doing today, is helping businesses figure that out, start figuring that out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that really kind of ties directly into the purpose of this podcast, right? To help enterprises figure things out. And one of the reasons that this podcast even exists is because UCA wants to be more visible, wants to be more engaged and connected and present in Northwest Arkansas. So you've got a great vantage point. You've been here, coming up on 35 years in this region. Where do you see, and I'll see if your opinion kind of jibes with mine, where do you see the biggest openings for UCA to plug in Northwest Arkansas?
I think the work that you're doing, making people aware the value that the university in Conway, Arkansas has. The reason that my youngest daughter attended was the value that it provides, the size of the university, the location of the university, and the offerings that it has are the three reasons why. Outside of, we had taken her to visit there many, many times through her life and knew that, that's where mom and dad met. But the value that it provides is huge.
Where could UCA create more value? And you've seen this up close. You've recently been back to campus, saw some students, visited some classes, done that a couple of times this past year. Where could UCA create some more value for companies in the supply chain world?
I think the university can help with maybe ask that in a different way. I'm trying to figure out how to.
Well, just if for an employer, what kind of supply chain graduate stands out right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, as I've visited students, I've been really pleased with their eagerness, their excitement to learn, and then their communication skills. I had an opportunity to sit down with a group of them, and I thought many times their ability to converse and talk about and ask questions about the industry, light years from where Kevin Parkerson was at in 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yep.
So I think, continuing to foster that type of engagement in those type students is critical.
What did they want to know? What questions did they ask you?
It was really surprising. Someone would just want to know the basics, like, what do you do? Like, what do you sit at a desk all day, or are you in meetings? They hear those type of things. And the other ones are like, what type of problems are you solving? We're reading about problems and things in the industry. What does your day-to-day look like? And that's what's really interesting to me in the supply chain. And I think a lot of industries, it's different every day. And that's what excites me. And if you like that, then focus on those. If you don't like that change, then that's probably not the industry that you want to be in.
Was it fun being back in a classroom, speaking to students, interacting?
Yeah, I love, I have a lot of that reflection of like that person that's not asking a question, that student out there, that's Kevin Parkerson. That's me, and, that giving back. How can I help? What do I need? And I take those learnings. I plan to take those learnings back to the foundation, and incorporate those into some of the work that we can do. And I know that that's likely a reason why, I was chosen to do that. But I can really relate. I have a unique perspective of born and raised in Arkansas. I attended UCA. I sat in those same classes, and I've gone and worked for some phenomenal companies. And now I have my own company. That perspective, is very unique, and I don't take that lightly. I know that I need to use that to the best way that I can, and the foundation is going to allow me to do that. So one of the ways.
Yeah. So here are my learnings that I can take back from your answer to this question. If we UCA, if we were to plant a bigger flag in Northwest Arkansas, where would you start? Would you start with events? Would you start with talent pipeline? Would you start with partnerships? I mean, what do you say is maybe most important of that?
Yeah, I like all of those, but I have a marketing communications degree, and a lot of the work that I'm doing now with my consulting business is marketing. So I lean toward the events, getting the word out, connecting with people, reminding people that there's a university in Central Arkansas and what it has to offer, what the value is. For me as a parent, I loved the fact that my child could be 3 hours away at a great university and in state. Those were really important to me. And then knowing that, the value that they were getting, the size of classes, the type of education that it provided. And again, 3 hours away.
Yeah, not bad. You could be home when you need to be, and you can be down there when you need to be, right? So, so you recently interacted with some of our students on campus in Conway. Here's some advice questions. What skills or what habits do you think are most important right now for young professionals? What matters most for young professionals, recent graduates?
Yeah, that's a great question. Communication skills and self-motivation.
Big one.
Those are huge.
Big one.
You can hire a lot of different people. If they can't communicate to you, that can be a difficult one to try to teach. And their eagerness. Are they eager to learn? Are they eager to fail and learn from those failures? Are they eager to work? Those are, you can't teach a lot of that. I've seen a lot be very, very successful just from their eagerness and willingness to roll their sleeves up, do the work, fail, and absorb that, and then apply that to the next item, the next issue. That's really, really important. And I see a lot of students, have that. That some of that is not taught. So I think those are really.
Did you get a sense that there was a mindset of eagerness and work ethic with the students that you were around at UCA?
Yeah,
because I think that's kind of what our president, I know, would love to say. That's what our student body is known for, is that they show up on campus ready to work.
Yeah, these were all. It was such a great experience for me and for the other mentor that put that together. The event that we hosted, and just talking with the students, you can see the eagerness. The lights are on. They're ready to go. Just in the questions that they asked and their engagement, and that was across the board. There was not one that didn't that wasn't eager. So that was really, really positive.
Yeah. Well, I hope you keep finding opportunities to go back between you and Doug and whoever else in the college business.
I do too. I told Doug I get as much out of it as anybody else, just because I know that I'm giving back in a way and can help answer questions. It's not rocket science by any means. It's just answering questions from the 18-year-old Kevin that's sitting out there that wants to know what it's like to be in corporate America and what are the type of things that you work on. It's that basic. It really is.
Well, if there's a UCA student that's listening right now who's studying supply chain and logistics, and they ask you the question, what should I be doing right now at this point in my undergraduate career? What would you tell them? Would you advise for summer internships? Would you advise something else? What would the answer be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're asked that quite a bit. Getting that type of experience, and if it is a internship or job shadowing, networking events, those are the type things that I would highly recommend. And those are the things that I'm trying to make happen as well. We referenced a time where I brought students up, I call it the scholarship, and we attended some events in Northwest Arkansas and got to hear great speakers, but also get to work on networking skills. Networking is ultra critical in many industries, but supply chain and being able to network and meet people in the industry and ask them questions and learn from those are ultra critical. And I love exposing students to those type of experiences.
Mm-hmm. What are you most excited about as we end this year and get ready for 2026? What for your logistics consultancy, for your podcast that you have now? I've been a guest on his podcast. He's been a guest on my podcast. So we're even there.
We are even.
We'll compare notes on that later. But what excites you the most about 2026? What are you working on? What has your attention?
Yeah, a lot. Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating to me at this point in my career. I mentioned, people to be eager and self-motivated. I'm so motivated by what is transpiring in the industry and where I can help solve those basic challenges of moving cargo. AI, again, is the flash right now that everybody is focused on. But the industry, there's always something new and different. Tariffs, in the current customs compliance category has made importing and exporting ultra complicated. And I think, people like myself can help from an advisory and being a resource to help those businesses. So I'm excited about continuing to do that type work and podcasting. I started a podcast for it's a marketing strategy for my consulting advisory business. And we're thoroughly enjoying doing things like this, talking to people, bringing voices forward, highlighting what the good work that they're doing in the industry and where they can help businesses, small, medium, and large, navigate the complexities of global logistics and giving a forum for that. So I'm excited about the podcasting side of it, but continuing to be able to help businesses in an advisory consulting business of all things supply chain.
Yeah. So where can people find that podcast, and where can they find your consultancy online? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Website, kpglc.com, LinkedIn, podcast is on YouTube and all other platforms. Go subscribe. We're on social media, just about everywhere that you can think of, exploring, opportunities there, and look forward to talking to you, geek out on global logistics, talk about UCA, talk about Northwest Arkansas. Yeah. I'm passionate about all three.
Yeah, well, I can geek out on two of those three, UCA and Northwest Arkansas. The global supply chain and logistics, I might need a little hand holding.
I got you.
Yeah, you might need to hold my hand there. But KP, great to have you here. So excited for you, and thank you for being part of our foundation board, and thank you for helping me be an ally for UCA in Northwest Arkansas. It's been a privilege getting to know you, and I'm so glad we could spend some time with you here today.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Kevin, thanks for being here. Pleasure to visit with you.
Thank you.
All right. That's Kevin Parkerson, UCA class of 1991. And we appreciate you tuning in to the latest edition of Central to NWA, a UCA podcast. Until next time, go Bears. That's it for this episode of Central to NWA, a UCA podcast. I'm Paul Gatling, Senior Director of Northwest Arkansas Engagement for the University of Central Arkansas. Be sure to subscribe to the show and follow UCA on all the appropriate social media. I'll see you next time on Central to NWA.